From the heart of Maine, this is the DuView podcast.
All right, and welcome to your May episode of the DuView podcast. I am your host, Du, aka Ryan Dumont, and as you guys can see, this is a solo episode for your May episode. Just life has been very busy, and between weddings and celebrations and many other things with friends and family, to be honest with you guys, didn't have time to set things up with a guest for this month. Life gets busy. This is the first time this has happened, but it actually came rather at an interesting segue, whereas the podcast is also celebrating its third anniversary, which is a big deal. As you guys know, the podcast market is pretty saturated. There's no shortage of podcasts out there, including obviously my own. And that said, though, it's difficult to really kind of be heard out there in comparison to a lot of the other folks with bigger production budgets and other things like that. But that said, though, we have created a lane for ourselves. While it is a small lane, it is a lane nonetheless, and we've driven through it, and it's my lane, so to speak, now. So I'm very happy to say that, things are going well, on the DuView podcast end of things. And that said, we have very exciting things, I guess, to kind of share with you guys, the listeners, as we get into, further into 2024 and beyond. So that said, for me personally, like I said, the podcast is turning 3, which is a huge deal. Also, recently finished up my semester in school, which was really interesting in its own right. Learned a lot this year. Have some really great classmates and some fantastic instructors. But it's different. Like I said, originally I went to a 4-year liberal arts college, and now I'm going to a 2-year more or less trade school. So in terms of student life and all the other things that go into it, it's a whole different experience. And I mean, like, just to kind of draw a comparison, guys, when I was at St. A's, I was in the jazz band. I was an ambassador for the Political Institute, worked in the Chapel Arts Gallery, did a bunch of different things, played rugby, played soccer, worked in athletic communications. And when you come to the community college setting, it's much smaller. And they just actually started for the first time, like, a golf team and a few other things at KVCC. But KVCC is also, like, working on what it's offering and things like that. And just in terms of the experience itself, guys, I guess is really what I'm referring to here in this situation. Well, it's just different. You obviously don't live on campus, and there's a bunch of other differences, so to speak, that come out of that. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's just, like I said, I'm just showing you guys that, I'm not the only one out there that's reconsidered, going back to school or trade school specifically. I've gotten messages from folks that, I went to St. A's with, that I can speak to one that moved out of New England and moved out to the Colorado area and was getting started in the electrical field out there, and had some just questions on how to get started, given I've never worked in the electrical field in Colorado, but I can give you some rough, pointers on how to get started, and kind of like what you're looking for, because getting into the trade is a whole different side of things. And I guess I can kind of get into that too a little bit, kind of tell you guys some of the great things about working in the trades and some of the more frustrating parts about working in the trades, at least in my opinion, in the modern age, because a lot of the people who you do work with, especially the older guys, they have some of them have an older mentality, whereas we don't want to share, like, you're here to help us. We don't want to share with you guys any of the really unique information that we have from our years in the trade, because we're afraid, like, you're going to eclipse us, or we're going to take their job. And that still mentality is still out there, guys, believe it or not. And I have a real problem with it, if you couldn't tell. So it's just interesting in that light, that you'd think, especially if you have somebody who's capable and willing to learn, you think you'd want to teach them everything you can, so that they can be, eventually, like, if you have a good apprentice, your apprentice is going to eclipse you. Like, that's the whole, like, master and apprentice thing. Like, you watch any samurai movie, or any, like, even fucking Star Wars, for Christ's sakes, and, like, master eclipses apprentice, like, regardless if you're light side or dark side, or if you're a shogun or whatever, like, eventually, like, if you are a good teacher, your student will eclipse you. Your student will go beyond you. That means you did your job properly. At least that's that. Maybe that's some modern thinking or some new age thinking or some new age shit. But I don't really think it is. It's just spreading. I don't know. That's how you make sure like traditions are kept. Like not just in the world of the trades, but in like culture and stuff like that. If you don't keep up on things, they go to the wayside. They disappear. The ways of knowing them disappear. You know what I mean? Like oral tradition back in like the old ancient days of history. You know, with cavemen and shit. Like yeah, you can tell stories verbally, but like it's gonna end up like a game of telephone. Eventually, over time, things are going to spiral away from the original message or the original teaching or whatever. And so I don't know. It's just like that's the type of stuff I get frustrated with. Fortunately, though, while I'm in school, I don't have that problem because the instructors are there to teach us, and they do want us to like learn all these things per se. And so that's the really kind of unique thing there. And it's just but some days when I'm out in the field, it just doesn't always feel like I'm being taught everything I could be taught, because it's like, well, if I teach you everything I know, then you're going to take my job. It's like, no, I'm not. I still have, 30 years of knowledge to come up with in, 10 years or something like that. So it's just like really interesting unto that fact. Whereas, like, I don't know, just like again, if I ever am running my own company or doing anything or have my own apprentices someday, I'm going to teach them everything I know. And if they eclipse me, so be it. Again, in my opinion, the master is supposed to eventually be snuffed out by the apprentice. And, like respectfully, obviously, like not like, oh, I'm coming here to, hostilely take over your job or anything like that. But it's just like, how do we expect people to continue, with this vast knowledge that someone else has accrued? Like you have to share that. Like it's kind of selfish for you to continue to do that and not always share knowledge. And it's just I'm not talking about one specific trade, or I'm talking about all the trades. I mean, I talk with my dad and I talk with guys who were friends of his that worked in Boston for 40 years. Same thing happened down there. It's not a new thing, it's nothing new, it's just how it is, I guess. And I mean, I know that that statement gets me going some days. It's just how it is. I'm not gonna lie to you folks. It pisses me off. Like you like to see things change and progress, but that's not always the case, unfortunately. But we make do with what we have, unfortunately. I did kind of talk about that in the last couple episodes. We've just kind of, as the podcast does, so do I. We ball on a budget. We do what we can with what we have. And that's just what I'm going to do as I'm getting through, as I'm getting through school. Just, gain as much knowledge as I can, be as much of a sponge as possible, and just kind of, run it that way. That's really the only avenue that I have at the moment. So, it's been good, but it's been interesting. Life is very much on the move, in that regard. Very excited for summer though. You guys, I can't tell you how excited I am for concerts and things, and just a fantastic time. A lot, like I said, a lot's been changing in my own life. Um, I'm now officially off the dating market, so that's fantastic in its own right. Have a fantastic partner named Becca. You guys maybe see something from her here pretty soon on the podcast potentially. But it and not to speak just on my specific relationship, but just when you find somebody that you're happy spending time with and everything like that, it does almost take a weight off your shoulders in a big way. And so that's why I recommend for everybody, unless you're one of those people that's just happy being alone. There are people like that out there. I mean, I'm not saying just like somebody who's like asexual, but in terms of like people who are just introverted and happy being by themselves, that's cool. But if you're somebody who is in search of somebody, whether you're gay, straight, whatever, once you find that other person, whether male, female, etc., so forth, um that's special in a lot of ways, and that's not something that everybody can say that they have, and so that's something that's for you and yours, and it's really unique. And I just want to say that that feeling that other side of happiness, which I had not always felt, is very unique in that aspect. And so things are going well there. And like I said, guys, like I said, I like to keep you updated with certain personal points in my life, but that one's a big one. It's been going on 5 months now, and things are good, things are real good. So uh shout out to Becca B. And like I said, ready for all the things that summer has entails with it, including things with my friends as well. And hopefully seeing a good array of concerts. Like I said, a lot of dark, a lot of not dark, but a lot of Grateful Dead inspired stuff like Dark Star Orchestra, Joe Russo's Almost Dead, and stuff like that. And also Goose in June. I'm gonna actually be seeing with Becca. and friend of the podcast and frequent guest Jimmy Talalis and his wife Christina. We're going to be going down to see Will, as I mentioned on a previous episode with Lucas. We're going to be actually seeing Willie Carlisle down in Portsmouth at the 3S Art Space here in another week. So I'm really excited about that, and just being able to see some of these like country acts that are like true real country for me, like like your Sturgill Simpsons, Tyler Childers. Again, I don't really care for the Zach Bryants and like those types of people. I don't think they're really country. They're pop. If you guys follow me on my personal Instagram, I'm pretty militant about this in terms of like true country versus not. I mean, again, I feel like I have a little bit of the stake in the game with this. I'm a student of music history, especially, and also if I'm gonna have to do a whole episode on him at some point, Maine's king of country, Dick Curlis. We have one of the biggest Grand Ole Opry stars, in my opinion, come out of the Northeast, out of Aroostook County, no less. Sings about the tombstone every mile, about how the loggers coming down from Huntsville Woods trying to get to Boston. Back in the days when the main roads were even much more treacherous than they are now, and much more of an adventure. You didn't always, as he says in the song, there's a tombstone every mile. If we, you know, counted up all the truckers and people who had died trying to transport this stuff through northern Maine, just to bring people lumber and lumber products. So again, like that's why I kind of feel like I kind of have a stake in the game here because like Maine has played a part in country music, regardless if it's been a small part. I mean, we have a very large presence, as I've talked about before, of folk and country music. So it's cool to see somebody who's from afar. Specifically, I think he's from maybe down Arkansas or something. I could be way off, or Oklahoma, but I think he's out from somewhere out that way. I haven't read his biography to be completely honest with you guys. But that said, very excited about that. And I just can't even begin to tell you guys, like to see somebody who gets up there, plays the cowbones, plays the banjo, plays the acoustic guitar. I'll definitely be sharing some clips from that show if they allow us to film. So, very excited to be seeing Mr. Willie Carlisle. And there's so many other good people like that, guys. Check out the Western AF. Um, Instagram, Spotify. They just did a great live recording of like 3 or 4 songs with a guy named by the name of Nick Shoulders, who I also talked about on my episode with Lucas 2 episodes ago. So like I don't know, I'm just on a country kick, jam band kick right now, guys. It's kind of how I am. You know what I mean? I feel like that's also kind of like other than like your early big band jazz type stuff. I mean that's really kind of the true American art form in terms of music, like is folk, country, and then like the jam band Americana stuff, like which started with the Grateful Dead. Um but that said, there are going to be some other things this summer. Hope to get to the beach and hope to do a few other things that are related to like the podcast that I can also share with you guys, i.e., like my trip to Arizona, which again, I'm still shocked that that vlog did as well as it did. You guys love that. And that I'm happy. Don't get me wrong. I'm happy that you did, but it also means I need to go find more of that content for you guys. And I don't know if doing short form content in the state of Maine will cover that, or if it's only going to be when I travel places. I'm still working on that and kind of figuring that out. Because, like I said, guys, we adapt and overcome. Like when I first started this podcast 3 years ago, we were a two episode a week, every 2 weeks type of show. And we struggled with camera. Now I'm so happy that video is up and working properly and everything like that. I mean, that it took a while. And I mean, I needed to be patient with myself in that aspect too, which is easier said than done, obviously, guys. But that said, also another thing this summer, I'm kind of jumping around here, guys, but is forgot about, the Sea Dogs. Love going to the Sea Dogs. They're a great institution for the state of Maine. Um, Very family friendly, very fun. I mean, like I said, it's great to watch these guys, regardless of how the Red Sox end up playing this year. It's great to watch like these minor league stars who you will eventually see play on Nesson or play on, MLB Network on for the Red Sox or another team, frankly. So it's really unique in that aspect, guys. And I don't know. I love Maine in the summertime. It's my favorite season. The wintertime's great and all, but when we don't have any snow, it sucks. And that was kind of the reality of the last few years. And so, like, I guess for lack of a better term, guys, it just having a hard time with the winters and just like getting out, getting active and stuff like that. I struggled with that myself this year. And now that the warm weather is finally upon us, the walks are coming more easier and stuff. I don't know. I don't know why I hibernated so hard this year. It just came with the territory, I guess. But that said, as we move on and as the podcast moves on, I do want to address a couple things in terms of either format changes or, I kind of alluded to a little bit of this stuff at the beginning of the episode. I mean, the podcast is now 3 years old. I know kind of now what works and what doesn't work. And I mean, that said, guys, obviously the episodes with guests do better than the solo episodes, but I still like coming on here and addressing you guys directly because I do value my listeners incredibly. Like, I know there's not always the most of you at times, and I know some of you are more consistent about it than others. And but the fact that you show up is a huge. For that, I thank you. I guess so. I mean, give your guys, all you listeners, thank you so much first and foremost. Like friends, family, people from afar who have just been shown. I mean, like, we're beyond the point of just friends and family now, guys. I mean, there are people that find this show organically. I mean, and that's awesome. I mean, like I said, I had to be patient with myself. I figured we'd be shooting off 100, 100 views per episode, but some episodes do that, some episodes don't. It's just the way of the world. And like I've said at the beginning of this episode, to preface that, I mean, there are a lot of people in this game. The podcast game, like I said, is well saturated. Um, do I feel like I'm the only one to do it in the way I'm doing it? Yes, I do, but that's of course I'm inherently biased there too. um, but that said, really trying to do a couple big format changes this year. As I mentioned, guys, trying to do more vlog type stuff. Like I know I've told you guys about some mine exploration and stuff. It's just with the weather last summer, I couldn't do it with the amount of rain that we had. There's a stream that runs through it, and it would have been horrendous. But if we have a drier year, I'll get out to the western part of the state and finally do that vlog for you. I know I've been talking about it for 3 years. There's a whole other different array of stuff I'd like to do. I don't want to tell you guys all of it because I want some of it to be kind of a surprise, but I'd love to do a vlog down at Fort Western, which is in Augusta. It's the oldest wooden fort in America. They do tavern night. They do a bunch of different kind of cool community, kind of try to give you the feel of colonial times, but like, obviously in the modern age. And that's really important too because people, if they're not educated on your area's history, I mean, that kind of goes back to like what I was saying about not spreading tradition and culture. Like, if you don't continue to teach the kids the importance of like your local history, people don't know about it. And that's another thing I've talked about with a person who's come on the podcast, friend of mine, longtime friend Jake Bass, who just recently got married. Shout out to Jake and Allison. Congratulations, you guys. Very happy for you both. But Jake's a social studies teacher, and he's we've talked about how important teaching local history is, and that's so true for his kids down in Massachusetts or New Hampshire, wherever he's teaching nowadays, and up here too, because like especially the New England states. I mean, we're so stepped in these important roles of creating American democracy and the spirit of America, so to speak. I mean, Massachusetts was the tinderbox. Excuse me about that. Massachusetts was the tinderbox for for our country getting started. I mean, if they didn't stand up to the British and kick things off as they did, we never would have had any of that. We would never the Sons of Liberty and all that type of stuff that you guys grew up learning about in history class. All that stuff is so important, even though a lot of people don't always deem it that way. And the same is true for us Mainers. I mean, we also, even though we were part of Massachusetts at the time, we played a very large role in the defining of America, the defining of this country, the defining of the 13 original state colonies, whatever you want to call it. We had a huge role in that. I mean, Benedict Arnold literally took a battalion of people from southern Maine up the Kennebec River, up the Dead River, all the way to Quebec City. Like, again, they misinterpreted a lot of it, and I will do an episode on that whole excursion at some point, but they greatly used the state of Maine for access and later on the role that the state of Maine would play with forming other presidents like I've talked about with Teddy Roosevelt coming to Katahdin. And Maine, like I said, is a special place, but truly in this aspect of its local history is something that is so important, as I've kind of gotten off on a side note on, but it's the truth. And I mean, like, and I guess that kind of goes to what I'm kind of talking about is that I'm at the point where I feel that I'm very much New England wide in that aspect because I know so many different people throughout New England from Vermont all the way to Massachusetts and back up this way. I mean, like, I've got people in every area, in every state in New England, and that's really a unique and cool thing when, especially when we look at our listenership map. We have listeners down ever since I had Marcio on. We have listeners down in the Brazil area. We have listeners over in Europe ever since I had Ricardo on. So the podcast is really has a unique ass footprint, guys, and that's just it makes me very proud and proud, I guess would be the right word. Yeah, it makes me proud that I've been able to build something up myself. Like I said, being patient with myself has been the hardest thing, especially when you like turn on YouTube and you watch like you have to remember you're not like Tom Segura, or like Joe Rogan or one of these people who are already famous, in which naturally the listenership comes from that. You know what I mean? Where you or like the Andrew the Andrew Santinos and like the Bobby Lee, like they're both famous comedians, like and they have one of the biggest podcasts, which makes sense because they're also very popular comedians on top of being funny in the world of podcasting. So it's just coming to terms with things too, guys. And I mean, like, that's another thing with the year three. I mean, like, we're going to stick to the monthly format at least while I'm in school. I can't speak to if that'll change after or not. I mean, we're still have another year, so we're released in another year of monthly episodes, which is still doing pretty well. And I really can't complain there. Other than more vlogs, though, guys, the one new thing I really want to introduce here in 2024, and specifically in our third year of being a podcast, is the DuView Podcast Music Minute. And it might not actually be a minute long. It's either going to be in print text format where you can read, or in like a reels, uh, short format content thing. Um, so that being said, I'm gonna talk about basically local bands that are playing from Maine to Massachusetts to Rhode Island, Connecticut, Vermont, and New Hampshire. Any of your New England states, if if you can pack a bigger crowd and you're playing a local institution, shoot me an email. Emails in the podcast bio. Believe DuView podcast 207 at gmail.com. If you're a local musician, i.e., just had on like Noah Smith. If you're, a Noah Smith in Hollowell or, anywhere else in the state of Maine, and you want your band to be focused on the DuView podcast Music Minute, shoot me an email, shoot me a DM. I'll happily, feature you guys, and hell, it might even show up to one of your shows if I have the time. So, that said, guys, I'm trying to do more to promote local groups. Local music has taken a huge hit over the last few years between COVID and everything else, and I just really want to do whatever I can to help these musicians. Myself being also a musician, I understand the struggles of trying to get people to a gig. I understand the struggles that come with being a musician in a lot of ways. So, that being said, I can respect it and I understand it, and don't want people to struggle if they don't have to. Trying to give a hand, that's not something I always had when I was coming up. And if I can be better than the people who, I came up through, like that's the whole point. Again, that's kind of what I'm going back to the whole theme of this episode. If you can be better than what you came from, like that's the whole point. That's called progress, guys. But anyway, no, in all seriousness though, like I want to help in whatever way I can help. So whatever little publicity I can offer, is huge in that regard. So I just figured, like I said, and it doesn't matter the genre of music. It's not. I mean, I'm obviously pro jam band. If you're not a jam band, if you're a punk band or a thrash metal band, or if you're a jazz ensemble or like even an acoustic duo, you'll get featured if you're good. If you're, I mean, again, that goes to my own opinions, but if I think you have the chops, like I will feature you on there, and it's not like, oh, you need to be like professional. It's like, no, like if you sound good, like that's the thing. I got ears, guys, and like I said, I DJ. I've done a lot of different things with music, and my ears are pretty good. I know what I can tell you what's good, what people are going to listen to, and what people don't want to listen to. And again, that's not I'm not inheriting any bias of genre or anything like that. Just straight up in terms of like what's funky, what's not, what's playable, what's not. And I mean, like, unfortunately, I'm not trying to be a tastemaker or anything, but I guess in a roundabout way I am. Um, and that's fine. I'm excited to do that. And like I said, because the real thing at the end of the day is not for me. It's about getting people to these shows of these people to help them develop. And if they want to get a record deal or write originals, like get to that point or whatever it is. And so whatever little I can do to help facilitate them forward is huge in that aspect. So again, if anybody knows any local groups or musicians, solo acts, anybody, it doesn't really matter. Shoot me an email, shoot me a DM. The podcast email can be found in any of the bios on any of the podcast platforms, or shoot me a message on Facebook or Instagram. That's the best way to do it, guys. And yeah, I'll definitely be looking to post the first DuView podcast music minute here too. And while I'm talking about music, I'm gonna grab a quick drink here first before I continue on. But speaking of music, the plan going forward, whenever I have any musical guests on, is to also have them play a couple songs in studio, much like you see on your Today shows or some of your the Graham Norton show or some of your other some of your other programming, so to speak. And I don't know why I can't do that. I definitely can. I have the microphones, I have the camera, and I have the technology and the skill to do it. So I figured, why not again offer another unique format for some of these musicians. And I apologize for any of the musicians that I've had on before that missed out on this opportunity. However, you are all welcome to come back on at another time, or just do a couple songs live from the DuView podcast studio. You're more than welcome to come back on and just do things musically. So that said, though, any new musicians or music related folks that I have coming on, expect that, guys, which is exciting in its own right. It's going to be live from the DuView podcast studios, and I'm going to do what I can to try to get those tracks like up on streaming services and stuff like that. So, or like your Spotify's, iTunes, YouTube. Well, definitely be on YouTube, but um, yeah, kind of do like some live sessions. And I mean, why not offer free album services if I can? I've been kind of talking about that, and the holiday roundtable before we came into 2024 and last one in 2023, and I just said, I'd really like to produce an album this year, do something, and that's how I'm going to be able to do it. And so it's a little bit selfish for me too. I understand that, into that, right? But at the same time, it's cool, and I'm really looking forward to the experience of working with a lot of these talented local folks, not only through, like they said, the main music minute, but also through, excuse me, the DuView podcast music minute, not the main music minute. That's something different. But anyway, the DuView podcast music minute, as well as doing some live stuff. So that's really what I'm trying to focus on, guys. That's going to be the new format changes and the new stuff I really want to add going into 2024. Well, we're already into 2024. But as we continue, and I also want to continue to put out, guys, aside from music, some more bonus content. Maybe a few other solo episodes or other, like episodes with guests here or there, or like some story based content where I, like with my Mount Katahdin series, I talked about the history and also kind of like the story of, how Mount Katahdin became so beloved in hiking culture and as well as the state of Maine. Things like that. There's plenty of stuff to talk about, guys. That's for sure. Maine is a wacky and wild and fantastical place, and so there's plenty of things that can also um, garner a story there as well. So that said, the other side of things, the last really big thing I'm trying to do here in 2024 is get the word out there more that we exist. Like I said, guys, I understand that have a very narrow lane that I am in. However, I'd like to widen my lane out a little bit, I guess, to keep with that analogy. And, the biggest thing, guys, that you can do for me, I'll be honest with you guys, I do not put a cent into boosting content on social media. I do not spend any of my own personal money on that. Um, and this will actually allow me to get into something else sooner as well, which will help us grow. But that said, guys, I'm officially taking on sponsorships, preferably local. Like I said, I've talked about this before. I'd rather have a local business, whether that be in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, wherever, sponsor myself or some content, rather than like. Some of the people who you see sponsoring on like YouTube, big YouTube channels, like my titles and like Manscaped and things like that. I just want to do a more personalized local attempt to this because I understand local businesses, small businesses are financially strapped a lot of the time, but for what my type of sponsorship you need to do, it's very cheap. But like I said, if you guys either have a local business of your own, or if you know somebody who has a business and is looking to sponsor or get their word out there more, it's a great opportunity for both of us to grow. And that said, the first sponsor, and you guys are probably going to laugh at me for this, is going to be actually myself. The DuView podcast, guys, this is going to be your first ad break in DuView podcast history. The DuView podcast is brought to you by Dumont DJing and Events, tailoring music to your event. Now, guys, I am the Dumont of Dumont's DJing and Events, just to clear that up. But that said, I do offer some very, very high quality DJing services for not a huge price tag. I am cheaper than any of the premier DJs, but I offer the same type of service. That's something that I am proud to do. I'm not trying to undercut nobody, but at the same time, you got to go where the money is. All right, guys. And so that said, I'm happy to continue doing weddings. Have me DJ your wedding. Like I said, it's a lot cheaper than hiring the local radio DJ to come and do your wedding for $1,500 to $2,000. It's no type of. I don't even think I break $1,000. It's not a bad deal, guys, especially if you're local. So that said, the DuView podcast is first sponsor is Dumont DJing and Events, with hopefully more to come, guys. And so, like I said, if you can't support yourself, why are you doing it? And so that's how I rationalize it. But that said, guys, looking to build things out more this year. And like I said, if you or someone you know is looking to sponsor, please do. Because a lot of the time, we're not just a podcast. I mean, we do a lot in the community too, which is going to be a good segue into my next bit here, guys, which is Kara. Now, for those of you who haven't listened to past episodes of the podcast, CARA is the Capital Area Recreation Association. We have a mile-and-a-half long complex of sports fields ranging from basketball to baseball to softball to Little League, Babe Ruth, the different levels of baseball, lacrosse, and down at lacrosse and soccer down at my end of the complex. And that said, Kara is 100% volunteer. 100%. We are celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we are 100% volunteer run and funded by sponsors and the local businesses in the community. Now, that said, Kara does have a couple big fundraisers. We have our sports fields for kids live auction and online auction, which is going on as we speak, and will actually be taking place in person on May 18th at 5 o'clock at the Augusta Civic Center. Please, if you are interested, go ahead online, look up Kara, Kara Maine, Kara Sports, on Facebook or Capillary Recreation Association, and that'll come right up. You can find all the information there, or shoot me a message directly, and I can send you the information. Because it's a great opportunity if you're looking to attend. There are still seats available at tables, and or if you just want to sponsor, donate them. There's information to do that too online. And like I said, CARA is a fantastic organization. Came about, as I talked about in episodes, I believe it was episodes 24 with Dave Hastings and episode 18 with Al Cloutier. I talk about myself and the guests talk about how important Kara is and really how Kara got started 50 years ago. And to kind of roughly quote Dave Hastings here, guys, I've been all around, the country and different places, and there is no other organization like Kara out there. That's a rough quote from Dave, from episode 24. And he's right. I've been to a lot of places too, and there are no other volunteer organizations. They may have been around for 10 years, but they don't have 50 years under their belt, and they're not, like I said, Kara has been 100% volunteer run for 50 years. All money coming from either fundraising or business community sponsorships, which is amazing. And like I said, we have a mile-and-a-half long complex of premier sports fields and courts. Um, it's just incredible, and it makes places like Kara make Augusta a better place. And frankly, not a lot of communities have the type of quality sports fields that we have, even in some of your more affluent, wealthy communities in the Massachusetts and down in other southern areas between there and Connecticut. And so that's why I guess you could say I hype Kara up so much or throw so much value behind Kara, because it is so important to the whole grand scheme of a good community. And if I guess what I'm trying to say is, if everybody had a little bit more volunteerism in the community, your community might be a little bit better of a place. I mean, we do see volunteerism on an all-time low right now, which is very unfortunate. Unfortunately, not a lot of young people in my position. I understand. Hey, things are tough for us young people. I mean, we half of us can't afford to get into houses and stuff like that. But if you're going to be sitting idly by at home, you might as well get out in your community a little bit and make it a better place. And I understand not everybody can be like me and hold my aspirations and thoughts on community and everything like that, because it really does. To quote Hillary Clinton here, who, I mean, whatever, but it takes a village. It really does take a village. And I know that quote's kind of a cliche by now, but it's the truth. And that's like probably the only time you'll also find me quoting any of the Clintons. But that said, um, I just I feel that if everybody took a top-down approach to a lot of things in their community, a lot of places would be better. And that said, that doesn't mean that inherently, like just because your community doesn't have volunteer-run organizations, it's a bad place. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm saying it helps. Like, Kara got started all because there was a Parks and Recreation Department in the city of Augusta that did not care to provide parks or safe, decent recreation. And you don't challenge people like that in a state like Maine to do things on their own because not only will they do it, but they'll do it better than any municipal organization can. Don't get me wrong, the city of Augusta, like Dave and I talk about, is a great, I guess I'll call it partner or renter, depending on how you, or, leasee, in a roundabout way of how, however you want to qualify it. They're a great partner, but they do not own the complex. They do not run the complex. They do not dictate anything that goes on in the operations of the complex. So when people come up to me and say, "Oh, wow, the city does a great job up here," I respectfully laugh and say, "No, it's all volunteer run." And that's something that is a big point of pride for us too. It's like, we saw a need for things, the need wasn't being met, and so, our forefathers, our ancestors in the area decided to take things into their own hands and get it done. That's admirable. It's very admirable. I don't feel like enough people do that nowadays. Just grab the bull by the horns and just take it. Run with it, make it work. And like if you listen to my episode with Dave, they didn't always know what they were doing. But you know what? For a bunch of guys who didn't know what they were doing, quote unquote, they did a really freaking good job. And that's where something that really sticks with me, and that goes into another thing. Now, while I am also looking for sponsorships, the DuView podcast is also a sponsor of Kara. We sponsor both of Kara's fundraising events. We are a sponsor for the upcoming live auction, and we are also a whole sponsor for the upcoming golf tournament in September. So with my podcast, guys, and being the do or whatever you or whatever, it's more than just being coming on here and blabbing, but it's also trying to be a communal force for good, or whatever my conception of the good is. But also being like, yeah, like any of these like podcasts can do a live show and sell tickets and stuff, and yeah, maybe I'll do that one of these days. But my real focus right now is building things up for myself, building things up for my community, and finding the fine line between the two that allows both to really prosper. Because at the end of the day, man, if we don't put in everything into our community, what can we expect our community, to do for us? And I understand our community isn't like a tangible thing that you can, uh, you can like build out a Play-Doh or something. But like you can see the community. It's all the people that are inside of it, whether they're homed or homeless. Whether they're rich or poor, whether they're smart or perhaps uneducated, whether they're left or right. There's all different fabrics of people that come into the community, and that's just what I want to take on in a certain aspect, and also make sure that I'm not just up here. It's easy to sit here behind a microphone and shoot my mouth off. Trust me, guys. But it's the other thing to talk about it on the microphone and then also go out into the community and work to do that same type of change that you want to be a part of. And so that's why I say we're just more than a podcast. We're also a force for good in the community. So like I said, I'm not trying to get rich off this, guys. I'm just trying to do everything I can to give back to a community that has given so much to me. I guess to be cliche in that regard. It's the truth though. It might be cliche, but it is very much the truth. I can't tell you guys how much like growing up in this area, playing over at those fields, how important that is. And like I said, to think that I'm a part of this organization, I sit on the board too, and that is turning 50. We're going to be having an event in August to celebrate, and I can't wait to talk more about that in the near future, because it's well overdue, and there are so many people in this area, a good group that have worked so hard, whether they own businesses and gave money or physically sent over their workers to build buildings. There's so many different organizations from like the LaJoy Brothers Construction Group to Augusta Fuel when it was owned by the Lacases, and now they continue to still be generous even though they're were owned by Dead River. Just a bunch. I'm not even naming. If you look in our booklet for the auction, we have all these quarter and full. Brooks Brothers. Car Care. There's so many local mom and pop started off as Albison's Printing, mom and pop places that just have always been so generous and have always risen to the occasion to benefit this area and give money. Because without them, we wouldn't be able to do what we do. I mean, it's fantastic, guys. Like I said, if you come to Augusta, Maine, take an opportunity, punch in the Piggery Road on your GPS, and just drive down the road and look out both sides and go, holy shit, this is impressive. And like I said, it's we're at a time where we're at an interesting crossroads with that organization. A lot of our members are getting older, and we've brought in some younger blood, which is cool. That's what the one thing that Dave talked about in our episode. If you don't bring in that younger blood, your organization won't be around anymore. And we have, and I'm actually not the youngest. I'm not the youngest member on the board anymore. I'm the second youngest member now. So it's important, guys. And like I said, if anybody wants to join Kara, shoot me a message. I can also help facilitate that as well and put you in touch with the right people. But speaking of the right people, you guys, the listeners, going to round back out to you guys. You are the right people. Thank you so much. Again, I wouldn't be here still if I didn't feel like we had a big enough listenership. I would have packed up this show a year ago. It's not like I have nothing else going on in my life, trust me. But I really enjoy doing this, and I really enjoy coming on, and I'm looking forward to having more guests on this summer and the rest of the year. Just to really, I love telling people's stories and hearing. I mean, the amount I learn listening to my guests, sometime, guys, it's better than being in school. In some aspects, so you just learn so much from talking with people, and that's really where I get my joy is being a storyteller and a story, I guess, sharer. I mean, in a lot of ways, I guess being like the old medicine man or some shit like that. Because, like some of these stories, like, the founding of Kara and stuff like that. I mean, people are interested in it, but they're not going to know. How else are you going to, especially for some of this local stuff, for some of this local culture, if nobody writes it down or records it, it's gone. And so I guess that's kind of the role I'm playing directly or indirectly here. And that's always something I kind of talked about when we started out on this adventure 3 years ago, too, guys, is that really we're about, adventures, music, and general shenanigans, but we're also about telling the stories of those whose stories may never be told. And I think we've done a pretty good job of that so far for 3 years, myself included, telling my own story, I guess, in a roundabout way here as well. So thank you for all of you who are listening. Thank you for all of you who continue to listen. And like I said, we're looking for new sponsorships and looking to do a lot here in 2024. So please continue to stay up to date with everything we do at DuView 207 on Instagram, the DuView podcast everywhere else. And if you want to stay up to date with what I'm doing, feel free to follow my own personal Instagram as well, our Dumont 207. So I'm pretty accessible, guys, and looking forward to what this year has in store, guys. Really am. And happy to celebrate our third anniversary as an institution, and also happy to celebrate Kara's 50th anniversary as an organization too this year. So, like I said, guys, if you're feeling generous, check out all the Kara stuff. Like I said, the live online part of the auction is literally going on right now. You could go bid on items if you wanted to. That ends on the 17th. So get on that if you are feeling generous and maybe got a little bit of money in your pocket. But in all seriousness, guys, I will see you back here in June. And like I said, you guys know where to find us and to keep up to date with us. And like I said, looking forward to some of these new things to implement in 2024. So thank you guys. Love you guys. And we'll talk soon. Be well, be safe, and we will see you in the month of June.